Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for that reception this evening. It's always a treat for me to come to your annual meeting of the Arkansas Municipal League. I have a very close affection, a very deep affection for those in municipal government. As Rick mentioned, I hail back to the day when my dad was mayor of Sulphur Springs. That was a town of 400. And Don Zimmerman would get a call from my dad or get a call from me and say, "We got a question for you." And it was always the Municipal League that was right there for us, giving us advice, counsel. And as city attorney of Bentonville, I had the same experience. But then even my affection deepened even more as governor to see the support that you have given to me. The Arkansas Municipal League, our municipal officials, our mayors have supported me in so many different legislative initiatives that have been important for our state. And I think it's because, well, it's the right thing to do. But it's also because I understand rural Arkansas. I listened to some of the cities that were mentioned, and they're not cities that are big. They're typical Arkansas small communities in which people find an incredible place to live, a wonderful quality of life, a great place to raise a family. And that's the community in which we serve. And I think we did some good things this last year. We've had two special sessions of the legislature and our budget session. Whenever we're able to pass a highway plan without raising taxes, but also meeting the federal match so that we have $200 million a year flowing into Arkansas highways, $1 billion over 5 years, and we keep that split with our counties and cities, I think we've done something good for Arkansas. In fact, that means $2.5 million in new money for cities and counties, $3.7 million in new money in FY18. A small amount of money, but every little bit helps when you're trying to take care of those streets. And so you supported it, I'm grateful for it, but also when it came to Arkansas Works, my reform package for the Medicaid expansion, the private option. And we wanted to put reform into place that included work incentives and personal responsibility, encouraging work for those that are receiving that benefit. But it also has an extraordinary economic benefit for our rural hospitals, all of our healthcare providers in this state, and it makes a difference in your communities, and you supported it. We got it passed with a 3/4 vote. Thank you very much for that help. Today I was delighted that we made an announcement. And you know, as Rick mentioned in the introduction, that I have really pushed computer coding across Arkansas, making it available in every high school, so that now we have nearly 4,000 students taking computer science or computer coding for the first time. We're leading the nation in computer science education, but we have not yet reached the goal that I want to achieve. First of all, these coders that will shape our future, these lovers of computer science that understand that you have to learn the language to tell the computer what to do, and when you can do that, you can master the universe. And so we've got young coders that are out there. We have 4,000 that are going to have incredible job opportunities in the future. But my goal is to have 20% of our students take that initiative. And so today, I made an announcement that we're devoting $400,000 to provide for every middle school in Arkansas, free of charge, a new learning tool to help our students understand the opportunities that await for them in science, technology, engineering, and math. And yes, they're adding a component for computer coding as well. It's called Learning Blade. It will be a learning tool for every middle school in Arkansas. I believe in low-cost investments with high return. And that's the kind of thing that we get and it feeds into what we're trying to do to say there's many alternatives in education. You can go to college, you can get a 4-year degree, you can go further than that, get great job opportunities. But there's also a career path that you can follow that will lead you into the technical skills, or it might lead you into construction. It might give you a skill in welding that you can make a good living, contribute to our society, and provide a need with dignity that is so much needed. So this Learning Blade, this tool that will be available in our schools, will help to accomplish that purpose. You know that I'm about job creation in this state. You know that I'm committed to that. And I am pleased to say that right now we have a 3.8% unemployment rate that is the lowest unemployment rate in the history of Arkansas. We have created 51,000 jobs since I got elected governor. Now, I recognize that I didn't create all those jobs. It's a large part of the national economy. It's what you do. But guess what? As mayor, you're a chief executive and you get blamed for things and you take credit for things. If it happens on your watch, take credit for them, right? So that's my motto as governor. I love our small towns, though. I love traveling Arkansas and seeing the opportunities that are there. I went up to Harrison and I spoke to North Arkansas Community College, and as I drove back, I stopped off in Leslie. And as I go into Leslie for my favorite piece of pie in the restaurant, I see a guy that's looking at me. He has no clue who I am. He finally comes over and introduces himself. We engage in a conversation, and he's from New York. I said, well, what brought you from New York down here? And he said, I'm an artist. I came down here. I wanted to live here. I've got 5 acres. And guess what he's doing? He's an artist that is marketing his art to his customer base back in New York. He does it online. He lives in a small town, and he has a great life, and he loves it. And I tell that story because we're committed to bringing high-speed internet access to our rural communities. And when that happens, people can live anywhere and run the world in a mobile society. That's the Arkansas I see. We already lead the world in retail. We lead the world in agriculture. We're developing knowledge-based state. We're creating technology jobs. But we have incredible opportunities to increase those jobs and that we can increase the market that we have worldwide as well. We've got great entrepreneurs in this state. And so keep up the momentum. Ladies and gentlemen, you're a part of it. And whether we do a jobs announcement in Batesville or Jonesboro or Fort Smith or go to Harrison, so many different places in this state, we are working with you, and I'm delighted that Mike Preston, my head of economic development, understands rural Arkansas, and he is committed to it, and he understands that we can create jobs not just in the large cities, but in the small communities as well. And so in 2012 tells a little bit of a story. Fort Smith in 2012 lost Whirlpool. That's 900 jobs they lost in that town. Since then, ArcBest, and I was there for the announcement, expanded and said they're going to create 975 jobs. Gladfelter moved in from Pennsylvania and started their industry here in Fort Smith. FFO Home moved their headquarters to Fort Smith. Health Management Association added 700 jobs. Spartan Logistics added 200 jobs. I could take that and I could mirror that in Jonesboro or in other places across the state. And the reason I'm laying that out is that we're in a changing society. And we lost 900 jobs, but we restored more than that and increased the number of jobs there in that area. But that benefits Barling, it benefits Lavaca, it benefits Greenwood, it benefits all the small towns, and if we can create economic drivers in these hubs of economic commerce and growth, then that will benefit those that like to live in the rural areas. in the smaller communities and increase their pay. And so we're trying to recruit the industry here, expand our jobs, and bring those economic drivers that's going to expand those opportunities in this state. It is a competitive world. I announced a long time ago when I was a candidate that the first thing I was going to do on the first day in office was to call 6 CEOs and say Arkansas is a good place to do business. Now those are cold sales calls. I talked to one CEO who happened to run a Japanese company and he only spoke Japanese. We didn't do so well. But I also called someone else who is the CEO of Sig Sauer Arms out of New Hampshire. And I said, Arkansas is a good place to do business. It took a long time. It didn't happen overnight. But 1 year later, Sig Sauer Arms announced that they're moving to Jacksonville, Arkansas, and creating jobs there. You lay the foundation. You make the calls. A governor can make a difference. Whenever you look at FMH Conveyor in Jonesboro, we get a call from their CEO and says, we've got a plant in Georgia, we've got a plant in Virginia, we've got a plant in Arkansas. And guess what? We're going to close one and we're going to expand somewhere another one. And so you've got 1 out of 3 odds, I suppose, but we were in danger of losing that facility there in Jonesboro and all the jobs associated with it. But we competed, we won, I talked to the CEO, and they closed a plant in another state and expanded in Arkansas. We have got to do that. I'm not taking credit for it. It's the local community, it's the partnership that we have that makes a difference. And that brings me to Arkadelphia with Sun Paper Company that I hope will change the dynamics of the economy in South Arkansas. Sun Paper was a competition. Whenever you see me traveling to China, knocking on doors, saying Arkansas is a good place to do business, we saw Chairman Lee there at Sun Paper. They didn't promise anything. They look at Arkansas, they're competing with other states, looking at where the best place is to do business. But then we continued to develop that relationship. And relationships and that culture is very important. I don't know how you celebrated the Chinese Lunar New Year, but I celebrated the Chinese Lunar New Year in the Governor's Mansion, Great Hall, with the Chinese delegation from Houston, the Consul General. They came here and they could have gone a lot of different places, but we enhanced that relationship. And then on the Thursday before we made the announcement, they were sitting in my office, the second-tier leadership of Sun Paper, and they said, there's a $70 million delta. In other words, it would cost us $70 million more to invest in Arkansas versus a competing state. I looked at Mike Preston, and he looked at me, and he says, Governor, we're tapped out. But we didn't give up on the project. We realized that logistics was a challenge for them, so I called the chairman of Union Pacific and said, can you relook at the numbers? They worked all weekend. We reconfigured that. Arkadelphia came through. We looked at the infrastructure. We redid that. And on the Monday morning, Chairman Lee of Sun Paper was in my office, and that day he was going to be getting a call from the governor of the competing state. They were sending the delegation the next day. He heard our latest numbers, and he said, told his staff, call the competing state, tell them not to come, we're coming to Arkansas. They're investing $1.3 billion in a bioproducts mill that's going to help us in our timber industry. It's going to create 2,000 construction jobs. It's going to impact not just Arkansas, but also all of the timber industry in South Arkansas. Now, Arkadelphia did an incredible job. The city and the community of Arkadelphia and Clark County devoted $10 million of local economic development money to that project. Not just about state incentives, but local community leadership and partnership that helped make that difference. Incredible, impressive amount of money to devote from a local community. Yes. And in Arkansas, according to the latest count I've got, 22 cities and counties have a dedicated sales tax for economic development purposes. Those counties and cities are ready to march. They're ready to do something. They have something to invest. They're waiting for that right opportunity. And it's important, because of your leadership and because of what you will do between now and November, that we pass SJR 16 on the ballot that allows cities to use taxpayers' dollars for economic development purposes. And so campaign for that, and while you're doing that, don't forget that one that's next to it on the ballot, which is the one that allows the governor of Arkansas to actually go out of Arkansas and not lose his power of governor. I want that. It's an economic development measure too. And so there's two principles that are important to me in governing. One, I believe we need to grow the private sector of our economy more than the government sector. That's a principle, and that's what we're working hard to do. Secondly, I want our social programs, our public benefits, to be an encouragement, to be a safety net, absolutely a safety net for those who are struggling in life. But beyond that, to be an incentive for people to get back to work versus a disincentive for people to work. That's a fundamental point. And so you'll see work permeate through the philosophy of my administration in economic development, but also in our social programs, and that's why we've reformed Medicaid in order to have work training programs available for those that really want a job and want to work. And then I got a little criticism for this, but in the SNAP program, the old food stamp program, we gave up our waiver and said, yes, we're going to have a requirement that people either have to be working or in worker training, and if that's not available, they have to be able to donate 20 hours a week to a nonprofit or a community organization in order to qualify and continue to receiving SNAP benefits. Is that unreasonable? And I love my new DHS director, Cindy Gillespie. So she likes to follow it in the trenches to see how our policy is working. She called me up and said down in South Arkansas, a SNAP benefit recipient came into the local DHS office, and he was informed that there's a new requirement. You either have to be working, in worker training, or volunteering. He ducked his head. He was embarrassed. He was discouraged. He says, I don't have a job. And it was probably obvious that he wasn't employable very well, and maybe he couldn't get into worker training. So he said, well, here's a list of places you can volunteer in our community, 20 hours per month. Well, he left with his head down and he was discouraged. 30 days later, that same gentleman comes back into the same DHS office with his head high, with a smile on his face, putting down his verification that he worked. And the worker looked at him, the DHS worker, and said, you didn't have to work 95 hours last month. And he says, no, I didn't, but I loved it. It gave me dignity. I enjoyed it. That is work. People of Arkansas want to work. They want to contribute. And that's what we want to give to them. And I'm going to end on this story just because I like this story. And maybe there's a point to it. But I was up in Siloam Springs, and I was there at a dedication of a plaque in honor of former Senator Jerry Henshaw, Representative Jerry Henshaw, and he wrote a book on the first 150 years of the Arkansas General Assembly. Those are the days of duels and a few other issues. Well, I started thumbing through it, and I was excited to read that in 1819, when we're still a territory, there was the first congressional election for a delegate to Congress from the new territory of Arkansas. The election was in Arkansas Post. And in that election, a gentleman by the James Bates won the election 401 to his chief competitor that got 343 votes. Do you know who the chief competitor was? Stephen F. Austin, who later founded the Republic of Texas. And so the lesson of that is, if you can't win in Arkansas, go to Texas. But it also reflects that we're in an election year, and that was a 60-vote margin. Just think if they had 60 votes that went the other direction, how that would have changed the whole history. Those things are unpredictable. And so this is an election year. Elections matter. And so get in there, vote, work hard. Thank you for what you do for the state of Arkansas and your community. God bless you.